How many films can you name that were produced or directed by a woman? How many films can you name with a female main character?
At what point are the female outfits too sexualized? Would you want to play a role where your only characteristic is your body? Because I wouldn't.
Let's talk about that.
My eyes can't see you, baby, unless you.
Welcome to our podcast, La Femme Fatale. My name's Jensen Merton.
And my name is Nate. And in this episode, we'll be discussing the misrepresentation and inequality of women in the film industry.
Women are misrepresented and over-sexualized in many countries, including France, India, and the US.
You're probably like, why should I care about their roles? They make hella money anyway.
It's not necessarily about the money. There are many more problems aside from their wages. With misrepresentation and over-sexualization, it all comes full circle and we can see clear connections between the film industry and everyday life. So Nate, what is misrepresentation and why is it really a problem?
Misrepresentation of women in film is a big problem because it leaves out a lot of perspective for the viewer. A lot of people use film as a medium and heavily rely on film as a way to view different problems in the world. When you have a lack of female representation behind the camera of a film, you lack a point of view that would be very important for giving people correct information. Film is also one of the highest paying careers according to the Nashville Film Institute. A studio director makes an average of $1 million a film. While there is also a gender pay gap in Hollywood, it is still a very high paying career for women.
Well, Nate, what sort of misrepresentation is actually happening?
Female misrepresentation in the film industry has been an issue since the birth of film. According to Media Industries, globally, only 3% of all film projects that get screened are directed by women. This applies on all levels of the film industry, even on Hollywood's biggest projects, with only 3.4% of movies with budgets over $40 million directed by women on the report of Blacklist.
Is this just in Hollywood?
Well, actually, the world's most prestigious film festival, the Cannes Film Festival, which is held in Paris, France, is a very bold example of this. According to IndieWire, out of the 49 films showcased in last year's festival, only 7 were directed by women. Historically, out of the 1,727 films ever shown in the festival, only 82 were directed by women. That's just under 5%, according to The Guardian.
Wow, I didn't realize those statistics would be so low, even with recent numbers being slightly higher than the historic ones.
Yeah, for sure. With these statistics, we see how underrepresented women are behind the camera.
Yeah, I think a lot of times as viewers, we don't, know who directs, produces, or does any work behind the scenes, so this disparity isn't as easily noticed. Film is one of the top methods of global communication and shared experiences. So when we cut women from creating these projects, we are missing out on a large perspective as well as suppressing the voices of many women. I think on that note, it's time for a word from our sponsors. After the advertisement, we'll talk about the sexualization of women and their portrayal as secondary to men.
Leftovers. They get reheated, renuked, and rebaked. Even when they're done, there's stuff left over. New Dawn Platinum Power Clean powers through tough, dried-on messes in seconds. A drop of Dawn and grease is gone.
Thank you, Dawn Dish Soap. I'm looking forward to washing my dishes tonight. So let's get back at it. Jensen, what does it mean to over-sexualize women?
That's a good question. I think it boils down to society explicitly or implicitly demonstrating that a woman's value is from her sexual behavior or appearance, and not from her character. Women on the street get catcalled and objectified because of how they look. Men ignore the personality of the woman and focus on what she looks like. This is over-sexualization.
How does this sexualization of women appear in current TV and movies?
I think Sarah Shepard, an author from verywellmind.com, effectively describes it as sexualization is everywhere. In children's TV shows, in movies, in ads, in video games, in retail, in marketing campaigns, in social media posts, in pornography, of course, and more. In the shows coming out today, we see young girls wearing skin-tight clothing, acting feminine, and engaging in inappropriate and sexual activities like sexting.
Picture Scarlett Johansson in Black Widow. In these big-budget Hollywood movies, we see clear sexualization of these women. She's wearing a skin-tight suit zipped down to expose half of her cleavage. This shows that even A-list experienced actresses getting paid tens of millions of dollars are still subject to over-sexualization.
When female characters like Black Widow, Catwoman, and Wonder Woman are praised in the media, young girls look up to them and aspire to be like them. They see Wonder Woman in her Golden Eagle armor, which is basically just a metal bikini. When young girls wear this stuff, it sets a standard for women to follow, which leads to sexism outside of the film industry and in everyday life.
I think in part, that standard comes from the seductive roles like the women in James Bond. They are sly, skimpy, mysterious, and beautiful. This female role is referred to as Femme Fatale. Google defines it as an attractive and seductive woman, especially one who is likely to cause distress or disaster to a man who becomes involved with her.
This femme fatale is really common in Hollywood movies, especially in the spy movies from the 80s and 90s. These movies place women in secondary roles where they need something from the main character male role. The seductive side woman role is simply to make the main character, like James Bond, the optimal male that everybody should look up to. The lesser woman roles are designed to boost the male main character's ego and make him look even more handsome and charming.
Have you ever seen a Bollywood movie?
No, I haven't.
Bollywood makes so many romance and action films. If you log on to the Indian Netflix, the amount of these cheesy women roles is astounding. Half of the movies have identical plots with background women characters. The plot is usually a heist, race, murder, or some kind of event where the special agent or super sophisticated male character gets called in to investigate. In this process, he picks up a girl who is either going to backstab him or get in his way. The women aren't given characters with meaning or significance.
On Feminism in India, Simran Vihan wrote that the female characters are written only to further the male protagonist's narratives. Their characters' sketches lack nuance and are written only to be disposed of in the first half of the film. Their deaths are trivialized and are treated as mere plot devices. They are sacrificed for the sake of the character development or character transformation of the male protagonist. That quote is exactly what's wrong with the Bollywood media and films. What is being done about this problem of both misrepresentation and sexualization of the woman in film?
There is a lot of hope for the future of women in the film industry. According to Fortune, Netflix, which is one of the top players in the movie industry with a whopping $17 billion movie budget, has pledged $20 million a year for 5 years towards bringing in more female and minority representation behind the camera. The hope is that bringing in more women and people of color behind the scenes will enrich the stories being told, as well as bring in actors that will correctly represent the female and people of color experience. Big film companies making an effort to work towards equality within the industry will be the best solution for the underrepresentation of women.
Not only can we help bring in female and people of color actors, we can also work to remove the gender stereotypes and implicit biases we have against women. I think a lot of the people viewing the movies coming out in theaters only appreciate the female actors for their looks. Next time you watch Batman, look at Zoe Kravitz's performance and judge her on her acting skills, not her looks. Sure, she is a good-looking actress wearing a latex suit, but look beyond that and start appreciating her for her acting.
Even outside of the film industry, refrain from stereotyping women and think before speaking about a woman's sexuality. Saying stuff like act more feminine or put on some more makeup only digs the hole deeper for women's inequality. I guess I'm trying to say, ultimately, women's sexualization and misrepresentation comes from power out of our control, but as an individual, you can still have the power to change the narrative.
So overall, women are pretty underrepresented in film, but there's no reason to give up hope. We have been seeing a slight increase in women on screen and behind it over the past 10 years, but not as much as we'd hoped for.
We suggest that you watch some movies and TV shows directed by women, and also show women in leading non-sexual roles, such as Portrait of a Lady on Fire, directed by Celine Sciamma, or Lady Bird, directed by Greta Gerwig.
Thanks so much for listening to our podcast this week. Also, big thanks to our wonderful sponsor, Dawn Dish Soap. Really cuts through the grease and grime even on your dirtiest dishes. This has been La Femme Fatale podcast with Jensen and Nate. I would say tune in to our next one, but I don't think we're going to make one. Thanks.